Welcome to the Living Large Theater Podcast. Billy Santiago here, and my good friend of 37 years, Gary Rodriguez, super producer Noe Ayala. You can reach out to us at livinglargetheater@gmail.com. We're available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Prime, and now on the YouTube channel. Just hashtag Living Large Theater Podcast. If you want to become a sponsor of this fine show, reach out to our super producer Noe at 956-451-1633. Make sure you rate us, share with a friend, leave a comment, and more importantly, hit that subscribe button.
Thank you, Billy. This is the Living Large Theater Podcast, where admission's always free. All you need is a sense of humor and a thirst for entertainment.
See?
And here is today's monologue. What the hell is driving this nationwide sympathy movement for anti-Semitics, terrorists, and lawbreakers? I want to know. Obviously, most of it is the handiwork of a corrupt media, a media comprised of employees who have no idea what they're talking about because they themselves are the product of the embarrassingly deficient education system of America. They're not intellectually equipped to deduce right from wrong, but rather they're like wheat blowing in the wind, afraid to go against the wind of the elite cocktail circuit they so badly want to be a part of. Afraid to go against the wind that applauds wrong and shames right. Afraid to cheer God and instead cozy up to evil. Now, I could be lazy and end this by saying, well, they just hate Trump more than they love their country, but that's too simple of an explanation. No, I say blame should land squarely on how these coddled, spoiled, and simple-minded morons were slipstreamed through their education system from kindergarten to a meaningless bachelor degree and one of those shake-and-bake master's degrees. Now, I personally know an individual right now who holds a master's degree, but they write emails and interoffice memos that look like they were written by a third grader. Shameful. And this person's in a position of power. But every email and interoffice memo this dumbass sends out reminds the recipient of how vapid this individual really is. And these idiots use their big college degrees to attain positions of influence in our society to persuade other simpletons to believe it's a good thing to nurture stupidity, such as it's okay to cheer firebombing a Tesla dealership, cutting cords at EV charging stations, and worse, suggesting for others to track down Tesla owners and physically harm them. And these are the same fuckmooks who are pissing and moaning about hate speech expert and agitator Mahmoud Khalil being arrested and prepared for deportation. The same sacks of shit who are up in arms that thousands of illegals are being rounded up and sent back to wherever the hell they came from. And worse, the same people who are crying about hundreds of Tren de Aragua murderers being sent to El Salvador. Now, Trump and his team are nothing more than easy targets for these ignorant, suit-wearing criminals created by equally ignorant and lazy big shots of our education system. And now, a word about our sponsors. White Sands Marina in Port Isabel, Texas, your vacation destination, especially this time of year. Beautiful hotel, a marina full of the best boat captains on the Gulf of America, a top-tier restaurant that has an outstanding menu, and one of the few places around that will cook your catch. And we can't forget about the bar at White Sands Marina with expert mixologist Johnny Barrera. Shaking up the very best cocktails east of Las Vegas. White Sands Marina is owned and operated by U.S. military veterans Arnold and Corina Flores. Book your stay right now at WSNandSuites.com. Also, Ward Thomas and Majestic Studios. If you need a place to record your next hit record, Majestic Studios in McAllen is ready for you. And finally, Fred Rodriguez, the Texas sportsman, recipient of a Texas Senate proclamation naming him the premier fishing and hunting guide in South Texas. Gotta have it. This is the Living Large Theater Podcast. Today's guest, an expert in national and international security, policy, and development. For his safety and security, We're not going to reveal his true identity, so we will refer to our guest as Mr. Brady. All right, Bill? Mr. Brady.
Mr. Brady, how are you, sir?
Good, sir. You?
Mr. Brady, thank you for joining us on the Living Large Theater podcast. Now, tell me, if you would, about your background and how you became an expert in the field of national and world intrigue.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. I served in the U.S. military overseas right out of high school.
What branch?
U.S. Army.
U.S. Army, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
And-
for your service.
Yes, sir. And I was injured in the service, and I came home in the early 20s, and my body had been limited. We'll leave it at that. And I had to figure out what was next. And I was raised with the idea that public service is an honorable and a noble thing, and that we need people that are non-biased to assist the decision makers in our nation to make good decisions.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so I went back to school, and they might have taken my body from me, but my brain and my heart and my soul still worked.
Okay.
So I went back to school, and I got out of my associate's degree, and I quickly realized I couldn't afford to go to state university where I lived. And so I applied to a university overseas, and they accepted me. And I had about a week to make the decision. And this bachelor's degree was in government, international relations, and conflict resolution. And so I went and I lived in the Middle East for 3 years.
Oh, you went to school in the Middle East?
Yes,
huh?
sir, from 2010 to 2013.
Wow.
And
What part? What part?
Israel.
Israel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got the opportunity to be in the room with the NATO Secretary General, the chairman of the IMF, and say, "Sir, I have a question." And they say, "Yes, sir. What's your question?" And that kind of learning environment you couldn't get at Harvard or Yale.
Without a doubt.
And so that opportunity spurred me to be more non-biased in relation to the information dissemination.
Would you call yourself a man of action?
Yes, sir. I would.
I think so, too.
I
Now,
would.
I know you spent a significant part of your time in California, and now
other
you're in
places.
Texas. What happened?
Well, California, unfortunately, so it was a great place to grow up in the late 80s, in the 90s. And then things changed. And when I came home from the Army, I went to work for the mayor of the city that I grew up in. And
What city was that, Mr. Brady?
that was in the central coastal California region,
okay.
South of San Francisco.
Okay.
And I was working, so I went to work for the mayor, and I said to him, I said, how did you take our sleepy conservative agricultural community and turn it into this bastion of liberal thought? And he said, "Oh, Palmer, it was easy." And I said, "Well, okay, what do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, the issue was that dog catcher by mayor, by city council, by water board, it took us 30 years.
Not really waterboard. You're talking about a board that people that
Man,
deal with
I was
water.
thinking waterboard, and man, I was like, how'd you do that? Interesting.
Nah, that's
Just
funny,
south
man.
of San Francisco. Yeah.
And
Hey, I met Mr. Brady at the the bar side of one of my favorite restaurants in Austin, Eddie V's on 5th Street. Now, quick story just to bring you up to speed with Mr. Brady. It's funny, I was sitting across from you enjoying my second Manhattan, and I saw you seated next to a beautiful blonde lady, and I could hear y'all speaking Spanish. Are you Hispanic?
no,
Well,
pero hablas español.
a little bit.
Then
Okay.
she left, and another lady came in, sitting right next, and I'm sitting there drinking, watching you, and y'all were speaking Russian. Are you Russian?
Not by ethnicity, no.
Okay. Well, then she left. Of course, y'all had time, I think 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I'll never forget, all you were drinking was club soda with a twist of lime, no alcohol. And I'm thinking, that's a weird guy, but I respect it. And then another lady came in, and you were speaking Hebrew. Are you Jewish?
No, I'm not Jewish, but I had the opportunity to live in the country for 3 years, so I do understand and speak a little bit.
I see. Well, without it getting into
Muy bueno.
details that would identify you, tell us about your world travels, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I've lived, worked, or traveled in about 10 countries globally. Western Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, and a little bit of Asia. And to any American who wants to understand the world, I would say get on a plane. I would say go there.
Travel.
I would say live there if you can, a month, 2 months, whatever, because we are a very insular country traditionally. We are born, raised, and die within 100 miles of our parents or our grandparents. And while that's okay for America, it detaches us from the world community. I'll give you a really simple example. So when I was stationed in Europe in the late 90s.
Well, what part?
I was stationed in southern Germany, and then I was deployed from there.
None of your business, Billy. There's so many questions, man.
I'm curious.
I like
'cause-
that. Curiosity is a beautiful
Yes.
thing, man. And look, again, anything you can't reply to, we understand. You know, I'm just glad you're
You know,
here.
if he doesn't want to answer it, he can say,
I
I
just give
can't
you a hard
answer
time,
that.
man.
I know
I'm giving you a hard
you're
time.
busting my huevos, man, you know?
So, hey, another addition to that story about Eddie V's, the last lady left, you got up and you went to the bathroom, and when you came back, you were wearing an entirely different jacket.
What do you
And-
mean, you're spying on him?
Well, I was just observing the guy. We're sitting there at the bar side of Eddie V's, and I'm watching. Well, when you went to the bathroom, I switched seats, and I went and sat next to where you would have been sitting across from me. So,
I remember.
And then you came back, and you reached into the bar for a napkin, and I saw that the jacket you were wearing, the one I thought was different, was the same one. You just turned it inside out, like it was a reversible jacket. And I started thinking, man, this is a man of intrigue. And then on your hip, like I said, you weren't drinking. On your hip, I saw a Walther PPK. I mean, is that your work?
A Walter PPK. What?
It's a pistol.
Okay.
Are those work tools, or were you not working? I mean, I don't want to get into your grill or anything like that.
I appreciate that. So when I am working, I do carry a 6-hour 40 caliber for personal protection from a departmental standpoint.
Okay.
But
Okay.
on the personal level, yes, I'm always armed.
Okay.
And you know, the Walther is a good weapon, and it's
What do you think about the Ruger 380? Too little, or
it all depends on your accuracy. So your ability to operate under fire. So I don't know if any of you gentlemen ever been in a situation where you've had to use a weapon, but your fine motor skills are degraded. So your ability to use your fingers.
is that when instinct
dexterity-
kicks in or not?
Exactly, and that's where the instinct or the training will kick in, and it'll be muscle memory.
So you consider yourself a marksman, Mr. Brady?
I've definitely been trained in that regard. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But the one thing that I would share with all of you is that even for your own personal protection, go to the range twice a month and just practice. Just for the sake of practicing. God forbid you ever have to use that skill one
Right.
day.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, the world's kind of gone crazy.
It definitely has.
And unfortunately, we have to be more alert. So
Let me ask you this: in the scope of your world travels and the information that you've obviously acquired through interacting with different people in different places, if shit ever does hit the fan, what do you suggest we do? I mean, I don't want to be a prepper. I don't want to have a closet full of dried food and cases of water stacked up around everywhere, and and in my way. But what do you think we should do to prepare just in case someday shit hits the fan?
So the federal government suggests, FEMA suggests that you have at least a 3-week supply of food and water in your garage at all times. And I think that's a good rule of thumb. The Federal Emergency Management Agency.
So I should go buy some of those buckets.
you should and supplement it in ways that are non-perishable.
Yeah.
But y'all remember Katrina?
Yes.
Right.
And how slow the government's response was. That's normal, unfortunately. The ability for the government to work through a situation and put assets on the ground is going to take time. The ability, and depending on how bad the situation is, will delineate how long it takes them to be gotten to. Recently, the recent storm system in the Carolinas is a great example of that. There were regions of the more mountainous areas of the Carolinas that even with helicopters and Humvees, the military
Couldn't get in
for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Question: do we still have FEMA?
FEMA still
yeah.
exists.
Still okay. Good deal. Just checking.
So let me ask you, Mr. Brady. I mean, I'm here listening to you and Gary, how you guys met and everything. You're sitting in the bar, hanging out with
A
ladies.
nice bar, by the way.
And
But I think you were working. I think
yeah,
you were working.
that's what I'm gonna ask. Were you working that night, or was this?
I can neither confirm nor deny that,
Oh, okay.
Hey, but and just seeing this guy operate.
So let me ask you this: so, are you a government contractor, or do you work for the government, or are you independent, and the government hires you as a mercenary to go overseas and spy on people and stuff? What's your role?
Let's just put it this way, sir. If the government feels my services can be useful, I'm at their beck and call.
Because I look at you and, you got sunglasses on. You're very, didn't shake my hand. So I'm thinking CIA.
He didn't shake my hand either.
I'm thinking.
I haven't shaken his hand yet. I'm wondering if those are real hands.
I think he saw your hands dirty. So
Is that, you think that's what it was, though?
No offense to any of you gentlemen.
Okay.
It's just being professional.
I bet a guy like you goes through a lot of hand sanitizer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, if you're a worldly man, you meet all kinds of different people from different parts of the world. You got to really be careful with the hygiene.
Whether it's water intake or hygiene, you're very right, sir.
So
Yeah.
you travel a lot. Have you noticed anything different from other countries? How they look at the U.S. now, as far as leadership and so forth?
Yes, sir. So with every administration, how people view things change, obviously, depending on the administration. But I think that what we're seeing is we're in a weird space right now from a geopolitical standpoint, in that we have the first generation of young Americans that have been raised post 2010, right, that are using the smart devices as part of their life. Then we have the international issues that are going on, and we're really in a formative time, because how the world views us, how we view the world, and how we interact with the world is changing drastically.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think long term it'll be fine, but
Right.
we're in that weird space
Right. Exactly.
where we're the young colt that doesn't know how to use their legs, kind of a thing.
The pot's being stirred. It hadn't settled yet, basically,
Exactly.
right? Okay.
Exactly. And the downside to this is that so we saw this in the 1920s and the 1930s in America, that because of our internal issues, there were external issues. And one of the things that Gary wanted me to talk about today is the homeland, right? And the defense of our homeland. And there's two components to that, and this does get to your question. There's the external and then there's the internal. And they're not mutually exclusive. The more that we take policy steps that are internal to satisfy American needs, the world is going to externally respond, as we've seen with Canada, as we've seen with Latin America and Western Europe. But in reality, it's a restructuring of the relationship.
Now, who runs the world? Because I've read theories that there's the Bilderberg Group that runs the world, the Trilateral Commission, and that they are independent of each other and they have competing goals and aspirations. Who runs the world?
Well, from a financial standpoint, so post-World War II, right, the head of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is always a European. The head of the World Bank is always an American. And it's been structured like that.
And why is
who
that? Why is
outranks
that?
who? Who outranks who?
So they actually work together.
Oh, okay.
So if the World Bank has the money, the IMF manages how the money's spent.
I got you.
And so, but they both agree that, hey, okay, we're going to give X amount of dollars from our bank to this IMF program, and it's lateral. It's seamless. But the differentiation is that one's always an American and one's always a European, and it has never changed.
What is the influence, if you will, of the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Group?
So let me back up for a second and say that I don't believe in conspiracy theory. And I use that as a broad term in that from what I've seen of government, they can't agree on what to order for lunch, let alone maintain some kind of a massive global conspiracy that spans 155 roughly nations or 190 nations. That being said, there are groups of individuals, corporations, multinational corporations that have an agenda, but it's personal, it's profit driven, and I think that is where the truth is.
Is that where the danger lies?
I think that's where the danger lies too, because as Americans, we understand somewhat the idea that there's good governance and then there's selfishness.
Yeah.
And that there's a range, a spectrum there.
And so, who do you think is more apt to being somebody who's looking out for themselves or somebody who's looking out for this country?
So I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. From my interaction inside the government, you have both types. And the same is true in the private sector.
But what percentage of the people who are looking out for themselves to profit from being in government service, and for those who are trying to help the country do things better, like what Elon Musk is doing right now?
Sure. So I think that what Elon Musk is doing, it's a little bit of both. He has the good moral intention, is because he's not he wasn't born here, right? He's a naturalized citizen, but at the same time, he's a businessman. So it's a little bit of both. And maybe I can clarify by giving you an older example, a historical example. So there is a revolving door between government and the private sector. There always has been, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So let's say one of you gentlemen worked for 20, 30 years for the federal government. You've built a network. You've been in a position of authority. The private corporation will put you on as a vice president of the board of directors for your access to that network.
Right.
And when you leave the federal service, you still retain your security clearance. Once you walk out the door and you're done as a federal employee, you don't turn over your security clearance and your access is cut.
Unless it's canceled by the president,
Exactly.
as some have been. I'm
Some
sorry,
have been.
go ahead.
No, but this is an important thing for average citizens that might not understand this. That's as long as you're not a national security risk in the eyes of the government, you keep your clearance, even if you're a civilian.
Did not know
So-
that.
so
That's interesting.
I did hear the president of Ukraine say something like to Trump that we have beautiful beaches and so forth, and we don't know what could happen, not yet. Did you hear that last part where he was?
I have.
So, do you think he knows something that we don't know, or he's just blowing air?
I think it could be a little bit of both, but you have to remember, sir, that there's the information that's disseminated to the public, and there's the information that is talked about behind closed doors, and usually that's classified. And the who says what and how they say it all depends on the seriousness of the information, and so it's a balancing act. I think.
He did go as far as saying you will feel it.
Correct.
Saying that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
And where's the immediate threat? Do you think from what country or?
Sure. So I've studied the Russians. I've made an attempt to understand their culture and their language, their politics and their history. And this is one thing that I can say for relative certainty, that the Russians are relatively rational people. If you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. But if you mess with them, then you've messed with the bear and they're coming with the claws.
Who do you think is paying and promoting this backlash against? You brought up Elon Musk. Who do you think is paying and promoting this backlash on burning Teslas? Or they even have a bounty on his head.
Yeah.
To be assassinated.
I think so. Let me step back and break away from the social anthropological and talk more about the political for a second to answer
Don't be
your
using
question.
big words around me.
I know.
Mr. Brady.
I mean, he threw that out there like it was not. I'm
Billy's
more like
looking for that
what?
Hey, I'm sorry. You know, we're trying to be entertaining, but I do not dismiss your intellect and your experience. So I'm sorry. Please proceed.
So one thing that I've realized watching the Democratic Party in the last 10, 15 years is that it's not the 1960s where you have unstructured action at the civic level that is emotionally driven. These people are well paid, they're well funded, almost
Well organized,
almost like a military level.
But how do they
organization.
make it look like an accident? Like they just showed up at the same place all of a sudden at the same time.
So with the use of social media and so there's certain platforms that are encrypted that you can the message will be deleted from the server and from the user's device 10 seconds after you use it. And so that's a good communication tool because there's no trace. And so I've been paying attention, I've been watching, and what I believe is happening is this is coordinated, this is well funded, this is well organized, and this is intentional. And
No doubt.
this is to sow seeds. So let me give you a historical example. In the 1960s, I've read declassified data that the FBI seriously believed that the counterculture revolution of the 1960s was an active attempt to overthrow the United States government.
Shut up. Are you serious?
The FBI,
Along with the drug use,
the
back
hippies
then?
and the flower
yes, sir,
people and all that. Really?
and so they implanted informants in every city, every organization that had any level of threat assessment.
They found out they're just hippies getting high.
But at the same time, the now we flash forward and we have the same social foment factor in
Through social media?
the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa stuff, like all of it. If you
Occupy
Wall Street, if you look at all of it, they share characteristics of a militant military entity.
Abby Hoffman, the Black Panthers,
Yes, sir.
Charles Manson, all those late 60s, causing ruckus everywhere.
Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye with his music,
Well, so I think that whole I'm using the historical example to make the connection.
Okay.
While to the average observer they may seem like disassociated events, but in reality they may not be, and that's called strategic thinking. That's something the Pentagon does very well. Is if you ever have the opportunity to read any Pentagon report, declassified Pentagon report, you'll see this. The strategic or long-term thinking of our government, it's a little scary on some level, but that's what they do because that's how things change. And I think what's happened is they've taken that governmental approach and they've brought it to the local level, whether it be protests.
Well, as bad as it is, it's impressive. I mean, the organization, whatever it is, as you alluded to, social media, the back channels, the dark channels, whatever you call that shit, where it disappears in 10 seconds. Whoever's doing that is using it well. They're well aware of it. But are you confident that we can overcome this wave of bullshit?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am. And
How?
On a few levels. So first, the community, the average American level, will start there. I truly believe the average citizen is waking up to the fact that what's been the propaganda, for lack of a better term, is not working anymore. The old ways aren't working of social control, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
All right. Let me ask you this, Mr. Brady. And I know that you're not your real name. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to ask you to, but, having that conversation with you at the bar at Eddie V's on 5th Street in Austin, Texas, we got into a lot of conversations, and I'm not Jewish, but I do have a problem with this wave of anti-Semitism that's percolating and marinating across the country and to some extent around the world. What do you assign that to, the impetus for that? What's generating that?
So unfortunately, anti-Semitism or any ism, right, socialism, communism, they all have a common root. And that common root is to change the political, social structure of things.
Okay.
And if there's a great... So at the end of the First World War, American troops confiscated documents from the enemy, and the part of the information that they gleaned was the communists had created a roadmap to overthrow society, and it was very clear. It had 10 or 12 precepts to it.
Our society or society in general?
Any society.
Okay.
And now those precepts are being used here in America.
Do you think Barack Hussein Obama is behind this?
I find it interesting that the former president did not leave Washington as most presidents do. Most presidents go home and they write their memoirs or they set up their library.
And he didn't.
And he didn't.
Yeah, but he's not even relevant. I mean, look what happened during the campaign in 2024. You know, I mean, it was all Obama. You know, pulling the strings
But
behind
you're
the
right,
curtain.
Bill, and that's because we all wised up. However, I think on a subset of Democrats, he is relevant. I'm not disagreeing with you. I totally agree with what he said, but I think he has a core group of people that will walk off the edge with him.
So let me get into that. So we're talking at the base level, right? The social level, and then there's the other levels which we could talk about. But anti-Semitism is a feeder for the sake of discussion.
Do you think it could be a conduit for other bad behavior going on in the world?
Most definitely. And I think that what we're seeing is that there's money to be made. If some politician stands up and spouts off, the opposition can turn that into $2 million worth of direct mail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Right. And I think that and again, this is just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. But the fact that the former president has not left Washington, that he's still in Washington, there's a very good financial reason why he has not returned to Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Let me throw another ism at you, racism. You know, before Obama showed up, I thought pretty much racism was a thing of the past in America. Obviously, there are pockets where it's still prevalent. I mean,
I would agree.
I don't want to cast stones or anything like that, but there's up around the Beaumont of Texas area, I think they're pretty rough up there too. But do you think racism has become a way to for people to make money by keeping it going? Because, like I said, before Obama showed up, I thought we were done with it.
So there, like I was saying a minute ago to your other question about anti-Semitism, there are layers to this, right? There's the local, there's the state, there's the international, and there's money to be made on both sides, and there's agenda pushing on both sides at all these levels. And I think that whether we're talking about racism or we're talking about straight up just being rude and disrespect to your neighbor, lack of the golden rule, that there is some agenda to be pushed there. And I think that for people that don't love this country, that don't care about our values, because unfortunately there are those people in this country, and they've gotten here by however they've gotten here, and anything they can do to break us down, to drive wedges in between us as citizens and neighbors in our communities, they're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think that
That's what the mainstream media does.
Yeah. Should we stand up to those affronts to our dignity and our peace of mind and well-being?
Yes.
Or if we don't, could this be the dreaded slippery slope?
So I think that it's a 50-50 split in that America has a choice. So President Ronald Reagan made a really good comment in one of his speeches when he said that our rights as we know them are never more than one generation away from extinction, and that we have to be on our guard to ensure that we protect those things. That requires us to talk to each other. That requires us to care about each other, and that requires us to say, hey, are you okay? And if you're not, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've become very selfish. So the way I like to say it to non-Americans who I have a conversation with is this: we in America post-World War II have known it so good for so long that we don't know any better.
Yeah.
And that has bred a inherent entitlement, selfishness, whatever word you want to give it, that is actually part of the problem, and it's the open door for the enemies of freedom to do whatever they're going to do and throw up their shenanigans. And I think that we as a society, we have to remember the golden rule: be good unto others as you would have them do unto you. In that norm does exist, but that selfishness, myopia, whatever you want to call it, it's becoming more and more pervasive. And unfortunately, it is pulling society apart rather than bringing it together. And like, I remember after 9/11, the country came together.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it lasted for a very short period of time. And then they started making political hay out of it immediately afterwards.
And then there were no missiles of mass destruction or weapons of mass destruction, and they put it to Bush that he sent us in a war that was unwarranted, and yeah, it was crazy back in 2000.
Was.
Yeah, I voted for that dummy twice.
Well,
Bush.
Yeah, George W. Bush. He's a moron.
Have you guys ever heard the debrief? All this information that I'm talking to you about is open source. Anyone can find it.
Okay. Speaking of open source, did you have a chance to look over the JFK files?
A little bit. There's 85,000 pages,
Ooh.
so I haven't looked at all of them. But
So what have you concluded so far?
there's more to this. So let me answer your question by sharing with you. So do you guys understand how classification of top secret documents works?
Not.
I'm still trying to figure out how to upload something.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a real quick nutshell version to try to answer your question.
Okay.
So the federal law says that the classifying authority, whoever the classifying authority is, has the right to maintain the classification regardless of whether they're alive or not. Now, to us, that sounds very weird, right? You've left your position, you're now a civilian, but you still retain the right to be the classifying authority. So under federal law, what that means is that if an agency head or a director wants access to that information or to understand how the classification was created, they have to go to that person privately and say, hey, I want you to release this. I want you to redact this.
Yeah.
Whatever. And this is a piece of the puzzle that most Americans do not understand. You talk classified nature, and they get a blank look on their face.
Right.
And I understand that on some level. But if you dig into this, really what this is that there are levels of security, protection, and clearance over the president's eyes. Now, is that unconstitutional? Yes, it is. But the government has long-term projects that a lot of money has been invested in it.
But there are built-in checks and balances, right? Because all this,
No.
No? Okay,
No.
Let me throw this at you. Mark Ruffalo, a very crappy actor, says that Trump is marching us into a monarchy. I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either, but I think that the president's opinion of what constitutes executive authority is different from a politician, because he's not a politician. He's a businessman.
Yeah.
And in his world, authority looks differently.
Yeah.
Right. And
Do it now.
Correct.
Jump high.
That's right. And I want to finish this thought on the classification for you, but that so we have a national security structure post 1947 that if the president wants access to the information, he can ask for it and he can receive pieces of it, but he can't see the whole story.
Why?
Now, I think that's unconstitutional. B, that violates the National Security Act of 1947. But C, this is reality now because of the structure that we have created. And so you're saying, what do I think about the 85,000 documents that have been released? I think that there's missing information because of the classified nature of these things, even today, however many years later. So
are they being redacted, or is it just out there?
I think that the president is doing the best job that he can.
Well, I read that it was a CIA inside job.
Yeah, I still say LBJ killed JFK. Hey, we're talking with Mr. Brady, a geopolitical professional, kind enough to share his time and insight with us regarding national and world events. Mr. Brady, do you have a family, you have kids or a wife you'd like to say hi to, or sort of give them a big shout out, which is what we do here on the Living Large Theater podcast? Mr. Brady, where'd he go?
I guess he didn't want to answer that question.
Hold on.
Mr. Brady,
let me talk. Our sponsors, Port Isabel, White Sands Marina. Make your reservations at WSNNSuites.com. Thank you, Ward Thomas and Majestic Studios. Majestic Studios can help you with all your audio recording needs. And Fred Rodriguez, a Texas Sportsman, the premier hunting and fishing guide inside. Did he really just leave?
He left, man. He didn't like the question you asked, Gary.
That's crazy.
Go see what's up with him. All right. The livinglargetheater@gmail.com is our email address. You can catch us on Spotify, iTunes,
did he
Google
leave?
Play, Amazon Prime, also on the YouTube channel. Just hashtag Living Large Theater podcast. Reach out to us if you become a sponsor. 956-451-1633.
He can't get
Rate
out.
our podcast.
He has to push that green button to get
Share
out.
with a friend. Leave us a comment. And more
Did he
importantly,
leave?
hit
He
the
didn't leave.
subscribe button. Gary's all butthurt. He left. Until the next episode, you keep living large because Gary's all butthurt, and we'll keep living large.
He left.
He left you, man. He didn't like the question.
It's his family.